Sakafet YouTube, and welcome back to my channel. Let's cook with me from start to finish. Hello my darlings, it's so nice to have you back here in my kitchen for yet another amazing recipe. We're jumping straight into it. Over here I've got 1 cup of pink beans that soaks for a couple of hours, and I'm gonna put it to cook. Remember my rule, whatever will take the longest to cook, we always cook it first. Over here I've got my chicken. I'm actually cleaning out my freezer at the moment in time for my Christmas shopping, and I'm actually using everything I can find, so don't be surprised if you see all sorts of recipes coming this week. I think I've got fish, I've got lamb, I've got beef, I've got all sorts in there. Over here I've got my dry seasonings, and make sure to check down below for all of the seasonings that I used. And then I'm just gonna add mostly all of it. Leave about half a teaspoon, and that's just gonna be for the sauce later on. Okay, so go ahead and mix the chicken in well, set it aside to marinate. If you have lots of time, you can leave it overnight. I'm only gonna give mine a couple of minutes, and then we're gonna go ahead and work on something else. Whilst my chicken was resting, I did decide to prep some green beans. At this point, I just like to prep everything. That way will just make cooking so much easier later on. And I'm just using these green beans. You know the drill. I love to cut off the tips, and instead of cutting it one by one, I like to grab a couple of them and then just, cut it off like that instead. And let me know in the comments, are you team cut off the tips, leave it as is? What do you do? My granny usually cut off the tips, so I pretty much got that from her, and I cut off the tips. Okay, once everything is nicely prepped, everything is looking good, I like to give it a good wash with some vinegar and some cold water, and then I season with a little bit of black pepper, mixed herbs and butter, and then I just cover it up until it's time to steam. So my chicken had been resting for a good 20 minutes so far, because I'm prepping my beans, doing little things around the kitchen as I cook. And in a pan I went in with some butter and some oil, and then I'm just gonna let that melt, and then we're gonna pan fry the chicken for about 5 minutes. We just want to get some color on the chicken. This is not gonna cook it fully, it's actually gonna finish cooking in the oven, so don't worry too much about cooking the chicken. Okay, just get some color on it. I like to give it about 3 to 4 minutes on both sides, and then I remove it. Because I've got quite a bit, I'm gonna be doing it into 2 batches. But yes darlings, after about 3-4 minutes, flip it over, then we'll do the second batch, and once everything is all done, I'll show you how it's looking. So this is my chicken all done, looking great. Again, it's not cooked, but it's got some beautiful color on there. Gonna go ahead and add a little bit of butter in the same pan, and then we're just gonna go ahead and saute some green seasoning. Usually for the smothered chicken, you can chop up some bell peppers, onions, and you can leave these quite big. But because I've got children that can be a little bit picky when it comes to veggies, I prefer to chop it up that way. That way, you know, we don't see it as much, and then we can all just enjoy it, okay? So if you want to go ahead and chop yours big, it's up to you, or you can just use a food processor and cut it small. I also like to go in with my flour at this point, about 2 tablespoons of just some plain all-purpose flour, and then just mix that in the green seasoning and butter mix before going in with some water. Now, usually you can use chicken stock for this. I wanted to use some water because I have lots of seasonings going on. I just find the stock could probably be a bit too salty, although I know there is the ones that don't have any salt. I'm using water today, and I find that the recipe came out so beautiful. So just in case you don't have chicken stock, don't worry about it. Use water. TERRI-ANN'S said it'll come out good regardless, okay? So go ahead and mix that in. Just mix that in. You can just use the spoon to just get all the bits out from the bottom of the pan, all those leftover seasonings and everything. And yes, darlings, it probably take about 5 minutes to, mix everything until you're happy and you have a good consistency. And if you remember the leftover seasonings that I had earlier from the chicken, go ahead and just put that in at this point. Mix it in one more time, and yes, darlings, the sauce is looking so good, and it smells and tastes really good too. Okay, so I like to let it simmer for about 5 minutes. Be mindful because the longer you leave it, the thicker it gets. But yes, keep the heat on low. Then we're gonna go ahead and just transfer our chicken in the baking dish while this is cooking down for about 5 minutes. Once my chicken was fully transferred into that baking dish, I did preheat my oven to 180 degrees Celsius. I'm gonna pour that beautiful smothering sauce, oh so good, over the chicken, and this is how it looks. I'm just gonna go ahead and cover it up with some foil. Guys, this smells so good. Okay, we just want to get the chicken to cook inside. Got beautiful color already, and it's not cooked, so now we're gonna pop it in to bake for about 40 minutes covered and about 10 minutes uncovered. Okay guys, listen, this was so good. So for the cornbread, I like to go in with about 2 eggs, and then I go in with about half a cup of melted butter. I give that a good whisk before going in with my buttermilk, my sugar, my flour, my baking powder, and yes, my darlings, this cornbread recipe is tried and tested. So good, so delicious. Again, make sure to check down below for all of what I'm using. But yes, darlings, just go in with your flour, your cornmeal, your baking powder, and all that good stuff. Whisk it in well, and then we're gonna pour it into a buttered baking dish, and we're gonna bake it for about 20 minutes. Now, after the 20 minutes, I think I was attending to my baby, and for some reason, I think it went for an extra 2 minutes, and for some reason, it got some strong color on it. But hey, if you want yours a bit lighter, definitely 20 minutes exactly and take it out. And I did bake it on 180 degrees Celsius as well, okay? Last but not least, on today's menu, we're going to be making some turmeric rice, some turmeric yellow rice. And in a pan, I went in with some oil and about a heaping tablespoon or 2 of my homemade green seasoning. And then I just go in with a little bit of turmeric powder as well. Give that a really good mix, okay? And I also like to go in with one of my stock pots. This is what I'm going to be using to cook it today. So no salt or any of that extra stuff necessary. Just add in one of those stock pot. These people are not sponsoring me, okay? This is just my own little favorite thing. So I add in a chicken stock pot, or you can put in a vegetable one. And yes, my darlings, I like to add in my rice at this point as well. I did wash about 1 cup of rice, and you guys know I always cook 1 cup of rice because that way there's no leftovers. So yeah, add in your 1 cup of rice that's already washed, and then you can just go ahead and add in about 1.5 cups of water, because the rule is always 1 cup of rice to 1.5 cups water. This is the secret. Go ahead and mix that in well, and then we're gonna let that steam on low heat for about 15 minutes on the lowest heat, and you will have perfect rice every single time. So don't ever forget, okay? And this is how it's looking. Stir it in, cover it up, 20 minutes, and it will be done. So it's been about an hour or so, and my beans have been cooked because I did put it to cook before I started doing anything else. So you know the beans got a good head start, and you can tell when the beans are cooked when one of them crushes easily in your fingers when you squeeze it together. So go ahead and just pour it into a separate bowl, and in the same pan add in some oil, add in a little bit of green seasoning as well. You know I love my green seasoning, I use it in everything. And then we're gonna add in some seasoning, just literally a little bit of salt, a little pepper seasoning, a little mixed herbs and stuff like that. And I just go ahead and just add that in, okay? And let that fry for about maybe another minute or two before going back in with your beans. And this is literally how I do my beans. Perfect, perfect, perfect every single time. So go ahead, let the seasonings fry with the green seasoning for about a minute or two. Pour back in your peas, give it another 10-15 minutes, and it will be ready. Make sure to keep it on low heat as well, okay? So that flavors can really just absorb into this. Oh, so good. Well, now that everything is well on the way, beans is cooking, rice is cooking, everything is looking good. Cornbread in the oven, chicken in the oven. Over here, I've got some butter and some honey, just making a little bit of a honey butter, little glaze, something to put on the cornbread. And yes, my darlings, mix that in well. Take your cornbread out of the oven after 20 minutes. In my case, it stayed for an extra 5 minutes, so this is why it has strong color, but don't watch that. And then we're just gonna put that butter, honey butter on the top. And yes, my loves, go ahead and just spread it on the top like this. Let it rest for a couple of minutes before cutting into it. I was so impatient. I wanted to see how the inside looks so much, but yeah, after about maybe 10-15 minutes, let it cool completely before cutting it. Yes, guys. Whew, that was so delicious. Like, wow, we had cornbread back to back like 2 days in a row, and my boys are still asking for more. After about 40 minutes in the oven, this is my chicken. It's looking so good. Guys, look at that. I'm gonna go ahead and just baste it. Use a spoon and just pour the gravy back onto it. Then you can go ahead and serve it straight away because the chicken is actually cooked, but as if I wanted it to get a little bit more color, so I popped it in for another 10 minutes, and this is how it looks. So good. Garnish with some parsley. You know, once the parsley comes out, we are pretty much done. And guys, this is looking so good. We have our chicken, we have our cornbread is done, everything is done, everything is looking so nice and so good. This cook with me actually took me just over an hour and a half because the beans took a whole hour to cook. The beans actually took a while to cook, but yes, darlings, look at the cornbread. That looks so delicious. And yes, my darlings, the beans is steaming away beautifully. It only took about 5 minutes, and you know the rice took about 20 minutes, and everything is pretty much done. So I really hope you enjoy this cook with me. Guys, I'm gonna plate it up to show you how amazing it's looking. And oh my goodness, dinner on a Wednesday night, oh my gosh, this looks so good. Thank you so much for watching. I can't wait to see you in my next one.